2014, a man named Ethan and his wife Danny decided to spend a weekend getaway together on Vancouver Island, a place they had visited many times before. The couple were seasoned campers with plenty of experience both on the island and in general. Vancouver Island was the perfect spot for camping, offering a mix of beautiful beaches and dense forests. They had enjoyed many successful trips there before something truly terrifying happened on what would be their final visit. Ethan and Danny were deep in the wilderness, far from any road or sign of civilization, simply enjoying their time together. They set up camp on a secluded beach and built a fire. The trail leading off the beach was about 1 kilometer down the shore and another 2 kilometers through the forest before reaching the main road. Along that trail, they ran into another camper named Leon from New Zealand, whom they had met earlier that day. Leon was planning to sleep in his truck, which he had parked along the road. The couple invited him down to the beach to join them by the fire. The three shared a bottle of wine and chatted as the evening went on. That campfire would mark the start of something deeply unsettling. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the trio began hearing what sounded like women's voices coming from the trees behind them, the dense brush that separated the beach from the forest. It wasn't completely dark yet, so they thought maybe it was just other hikers or campers nearby, or even voices echoing strangely from a group anchored offshore. All three agreed they were hearing female voices, faint but distinct. As it got darker, Leon said goodnight and started walking back to his truck before it got too late. Ethan and Danny stayed by the fire. Danny was beginning to feel uneasy. The voices hadn't stopped. They sounded like two women talking, but whatever they were saying was completely unintelligible. The voices seemed to be coming from just beyond the tree line. The couple stayed up late, keeping the fire going and listening. Only when the voices finally stopped did they decide to put out the fire and head into their tent for the night. Before turning in, they scanned the cove several times with their flashlights, looking for boats that might explain the strange sounds, but saw nothing. Around 3 a.m., they finally laid down, ready to get some rest. About 15 minutes later, Ethan and Danny heard footsteps moving around their campsite near the spot where the fire had been. The steps came from the brush inland, behind their tent, an area too dense for anyone to easily walk through. They froze, hoping it was just a bear or some other animal. The only bears on the island were black bears, which were typically shy around people. The footsteps moved from the fire pit toward the tent, then back into the woods. 5 minutes later, they returned, and this time, they were accompanied by two female voices, clearly audible and close. The voices stuttered and overlapped, speaking loudly in a way that didn't resemble any language Ethan or Danny recognized. It wasn't a normal conversation, more like chaotic, overlapping, muttering, unnervingly human yet impossible to understand. The voices circled from the fire pit to the tent, still speaking loudly, before stopping right outside. For several seconds, the two figures stood over the tent, talking in that strange, loud babble, and then, abruptly, everything went silent. The voices retreated back into the forest and were never heard again. Ethan and Danny lay frozen in fear, paralyzed and unable to move. They woke up around 11 the next morning. Still shaken and exhausted, they packed up quickly and left the campsite, and they never returned. In hindsight, staying silent inside the tent had probably been the smartest thing they could have done, avoiding the attention of whoever or whatever was outside. The following photos were taken by hikers Kylie Cashwell and John Stone, both residents of Eagle Mountain, Utah, a small town just south of Salt Lake City. Over the past few years, they had explored many of Utah's forests looking for interesting discoveries. One day, they found something they would never forget. While hiking near Cedar Fort, about 5 miles south of Salt Lake City, Kylie came across a large number of animal bones and piles of garbage left by people. But things turned strange when she began noticing eerie symbols and scattered animal parts throughout the forest, some arranged in unusual patterns. On September 15, she brought along her friend Josh to show him what she had been finding. This time, they stumbled upon something far more disturbing. On the trail lay a severed deer head, surrounded by its detached legs, forming a pentagram on the ground. None of it had been there the first time she passed through. As the sun began to set, they took photos and agreed it was time to head back. But the farther they walked, the more disoriented they became. Nothing looked familiar. They tried to find landmarks that might refresh their memory, but as darkness fell, they realized they were completely lost. With only their phone flashlights to guide them, a growing sense of dread set in. They both began feeling like they were being watched. When they picked up the pace, they heard branches and brush moving about 20 feet to their right, a terrifying detail, since there was no wind that night. Panic took over, and they ran along a narrow trail, hoping it would lead them back to Kylie's car. Then, out of nowhere, they heard a deep, guttural scream, something so unnatural it couldn't have come from a human or any known animal. Kylie refused to look back, but Josh did, and he swore he saw a massive, dark figure standing on the trail behind them, far too large to be a person. By sheer luck, they reached the car. Whatever had been chasing them seemingly gone. They sped away from the forest and went straight home. Later research led Kylie to reports of occult rituals, murders, and disappearances connected to that same forest. Like Ethan and Danny, she never went back. Deep in the northern forests of Germany, two friends were hiking through an area that once belonged to the former East Germany when they discovered strange metal pipes sticking out of the ground, resembling periscopes. Feeling both curious and reckless, they decided to investigate further. Pushing through thick brush, they found a hidden entrance, a large wooden hatch covering an underground passageway. What they uncovered was a chilling piece of forgotten history, a massive abandoned military bunker. The tunnels branched off in several directions, forming a maze-like structure. The friends stayed close, afraid of getting lost. As they ventured deeper, they saw German words scrawled on the walls, one translated to, "Curiosity will help you." Encouraged, they pressed on. The deeper they went, the more decayed everything became. Then they came across more writing, "Hello Satan, I love you." Some corridors were flooded, the air reeked of sewage, and the atmosphere grew heavier with every step. In one large chamber, they found a strange machine in the center, and a single shoe half buried in the mud. Whoever had left it behind must have fled in a hurry. Historians believe the structure was a Nazi-era military bunker from World War II, possibly used as a secret shelter. But why the soldiers seem to have fled so suddenly, and whether they were the ones who scrawled those disturbing messages, remains unknown. In the final story, for privacy reasons, we'll call the man Bill. Bill was an avid hiker who, in 2016, visited his brother near Downsville, New York. His brother owned a small house and a barn, and the family often gathered there in late autumn when the leaves had mostly turned orange and begun to fall. While walking along a narrow trail not far from his brother's property, Bill stumbled upon a burlap sack lying on the forest floor. It looked oddly new, not dirty or weathered, as if it had been there long. But what disturbed him most was the horrible stench coming from inside the bag. However, there was clearly something rotting inside the bag. Bill immediately feared the worst, but he also knew he had to open it, just in case it turned out to be a person. Gathering his courage, he reached for the zipper, but before he could open it, he heard footsteps approaching from the trail, and then a deep voice said, "That's mine, please don't touch it." A large man wearing a dirty jacket and jeans came quickly out of the woods and grabbed the burlap sack off the ground. The two locked eyes for a moment. Bill, startled, told the man he thought someone had accidentally left the bag behind. The stranger replied that he was storing his hunting game inside. Even though Bill wasn't a hunter, he knew that fresh game is always stored in a cooler, not in a burlap sack, and that explanation didn't account for the putrid smell either. Typically, it takes several days for a carcass to rot enough to smell that bad. Feeling uneasy, Bill apologized and started walking down the trail again, a little faster this time. He could tell the man had noticed his nervousness. As Bill moved away, he heard the sound of the burlap bag thudding to the ground behind him. When he turned around, the man was gone. No trace. Anxious now, Bill kept walking, pulling out his phone to call his brother for an emergency pickup, but there was no signal anywhere in the forest. His only option was to keep moving forward and hope not to cross paths with that man again. But soon, he began hearing the crunch of dry leaves not far behind him. Every time he glanced back, the trail looked empty. Eventually, his worst fear was confirmed: the man was following him, stalking from tree to tree in the distance. Without thinking, Bill broke into a run, sprinting down the narrow path. He didn't dare look back. He could clearly hear the heavy footsteps crashing through the leaves close behind him. After several frantic minutes, Bill reached what looked like an abandoned property, overgrown with tall grass and weeds. Too exhausted to keep running, he slipped in through the back door of an old house, praying it would provide cover. Inside, he ducked into the first bedroom he found and hid beneath a broken bed frame. Moments later, the back door creaked open. Heavy footsteps entered the house. Bill could hear the man's labored breathing, as though he too had been running. The footsteps moved from room to room, then stopped right inside the bedroom. For a single terrifying second, Bill could hear him standing there, and then, mercifully, the steps retreated. The back door slammed shut. Bill stayed hidden for another half hour, too afraid to move. Only when the fading daylight began to disappear did he finally crawl out from under the bed. Knowing he needed help before dark, he left the house and ran down a dirt path that looked like an old driveway. Eventually, it led him to a main road. There, by pure luck, a passing driver stopped and gave him a ride back to his brother's house. Once home, Bill immediately called the local sheriff's department and filed a report, giving as detailed a description as he could, the man's face, his clothing, and where the encounter had taken place. Although the police were never able to confirm what had been inside the burlap sack, the overpowering stench of decay was evidence enough. The fact that the man had chased Bill so relentlessly suggested he was hiding something he couldn't risk anyone seeing. On March 4th, 2022, a 21-year-old college student named Gavin, studying at Texas Tech, came home after a night out with his friends when he received a strange text from an unknown number. "Hey, is this Gavin?" the message read. "Yeah. Who's this?" he replied. "It's Alex. Where are you? Send me your location." "I'm home. What's going on? Whose number is this?" "I'm using my friend's phone. We're stuck at the bar. Can you call us an Uber to your place?" At first, Gavin thought it was just his friend Alex being careless after a few drinks. But when the stranger added, "My app isn't working," something about it felt off. Gavin asked why he couldn't just order one from his friend's phone. The response made even less sense. "Just send me your address." Earlier that night, Gavin had been out with Alex and another friend, Omar, at a bar in Dallas called Parliament. The three were wrapping up the night when Alex spotted some other friends and decided to stay behind. Gavin and Omar left, assuming he'd catch up later. About an hour passed before Gavin got the message from the mysterious number claiming to be Alex. The person insisted they were using someone else's phone because Alex had lost his. They said they couldn't order an Uber and asked Gavin for his address. Though it seemed strange, Gavin figured Alex was drunk and confused, so he sent the address, joking that Alex should probably memorize it by now. The replies continued. "We're on our way," the stranger wrote. When Gavin asked if Alex knew the person whose phone he was using, the answer was simply no. Then another message came that made Gavin's blood run cold. "Can we come in through the front door when we get there?" They were asking him to leave his door unlocked. That was when Gavin realized something was seriously wrong. He tried calling the number, but it went straight to voicemail. He texted Alex's real number, but there was no reply. Every call went unanswered, and the messages showed as sent but never delivered. Now, fully alarmed, Gavin stopped replying and called Omar to see if he'd heard anything. Omar hadn't. They both agreed something was wrong and tried to call the bar, but no phone number was listed online. Just then, another text appeared. "We're here. Open the door." Gavin walked to his front door and looked through the peephole. No one was there. For a moment, he thought it might be a prank. Then came the knocking. Slow, deliberate knocks echoed through the door. He looked again, still no one. The reality hit him hard. Whoever it was had actually come to his house. "Who is this?" Gavin shouted. The reply came as a text. "Lol." He typed back, "Who's out there?" The next message flashed on the screen. "Open the door." Instead of responding, Gavin called the police. The knocking continued for a few long, tense minutes, then stopped. Whoever had been there must have realized Gavin wasn't alone anymore. Later that night, Gavin managed to reach one of Alex's other friends, who told him what had really happened. Alex and a friend named Wallowitz had been attacked on the street by a group of men. They were both badly injured and taken to the hospital. During the attack, Alex's phone had been stolen, and because he hadn't set a password, the thieves had full access to all of his messages and contacts. The attackers had read the conversation between Alex and Gavin and used it to figure out that Gavin was home alone. They tried to lure him into unlocking his door so they could get inside. If he had opened it, there's no telling what might have happened. The phone used to text Gavin was later confirmed to be another stolen device, making it impossible to trace. The attackers were never caught, and the case remains unsolved. Not long after, another chilling story surfaced from a viewer named Rob, involving his father's ex-girlfriend, a woman named Kathy. Rob explained that his father had ended the relationship after 6 months because Kathy had become unstable, paranoid, delusional, and unpredictable. Her mental health seemed to unravel quickly for reasons no one could explain. Around the same time, Rob's grandparents had passed away, and Kathy became obsessed with the idea that their spirits had cursed her. After the breakup, Kathy began messaging Rob directly, since his father wouldn't respond to her. The first message seemed innocent enough. "Hi, honey, I need your help." Rob asked what was wrong, and her response was disturbing. "Your father's parents cursed me. I need you to tell me which cemetery they're buried in and the exact plot number." Rob was confused. Kathy continued, "I keep hearing their voices. I can feel them around me. I know it sounds crazy, but I need it to stop." Rob showed the messages to his father, who told him to ignore her. Instead, Rob let the messages keep coming, curious to see just how far she would go. That night, a new text came in. "I need to dig up their graves. If you help me, I'll sleep with you. I know you've always watched me whenever I was at your father's house." Rob didn't reply. The next day, the messages got worse. When Rob showed them to his father again, his father finally snapped. He called Kathy and threatened to file a restraining order if she didn't stop. She kept calling anyway until he blocked her. That night, while Rob's father was asleep, Rob stayed up late watching TV in his study. Suddenly, he heard the doorknob rattling. He looked through the glass panel and saw Kathy outside, forcing a knife into the keyhole. She looked up, saw him, and threw the knife at the glass, shattering it. Then she began screaming and begging him to let her in. Rob called for his father. When his dad ran to the door, Kathy started screaming, "No!" over and over as he yelled at her to leave and called the police. She continued shouting as the sirens approached, her screams echoing into the night. Kathy's screaming turned violent. She began shouting insults and threats, waving the knife wildly in the air. She refused to leave, pacing and slashing at the air as Rob and his father stayed behind the locked door. Within minutes, police sirens filled the street, but she didn't move. When the officers arrived, they found her still standing at the front door, the knife clutched tightly in her hand. Because she had shown up at their house armed and had refused to leave when ordered, Kathy was arrested on the spot. Rob's father immediately filed for a restraining order against her. It became painfully clear that Kathy was suffering from a severe mental illness, likely some form of paranoid delusional disorder. But that didn't make her any less dangerous to herself or to others. The knife she brought, and her attempt to force her way into their home, was proof enough of that. Thankfully, no one was hurt that night. A few months later, another chilling incident took place hundreds of miles away, and one 8-year-old girl named Liana, living in Hoboken, New Jersey, was out with a friend at a local bar on a Saturday night when she received a notification on her phone someone was trying to message her on Instagram. Normally, most people ignore direct message requests from strangers since they come from accounts you don't follow. For most young women, 9 times out of 10, those requests are from strange men sending flirty or creepy messages. But curiosity got the better of her. Liana opened the message. It came from a blank account with no profile picture, no followers, and no posts. The message read, "Are you at McSwiggan's?" That was the very bar she was sitting in at that exact moment. The fact that someone knew her location so precisely was immediately alarming. Still, she replied cautiously, "Yeah, who's this?" The next message made her skin crawl. "You look beautiful in that pink top. Are you 18 yet? You shouldn't be in a bar, but don't worry, I won't tell anyone." Liana asked again who it was. The response came, "Just a guy who thinks you're really attractive." At first, she assumed it was a prank, maybe a friend messing with her. She named a few people she suspected, but the stranger denied them all. When she asked for a selfie, the message instead said, "Why don't you look around the bar? See if you can spot me." Liana and her friend scanned the crowd, trying to see who might be alone and watching them. A few older men were sitting by themselves, but none seemed familiar. Feeling uneasy, they left the crowded bar and walked to another one nearby that was smaller and quieter. They sat down, ordered drinks, and tried to laugh it off. Then Liana's phone buzzed again. "This one's my favorite bar. Good choice." Her blood went cold. She showed her friend, and both began to look around the room. That's when she saw him, a middle-aged man sitting alone on a stool near the door, staring at her with wide, empty eyes. She later said he looked exactly like the killer from The Lovely Bones. The glasses, the hair, the unsettling smile. He was making no effort to hide it anymore. The girls immediately went to the bartender for help, showing him the messages and pointing out the man. The bartender took one look, walked over, and shouted at the guy to leave, threatening to throw him out himself if he didn't go. The man stood up and left without a word, visibly humiliated. Liana and her friend stayed another half hour, just to make sure he was gone. When they finally left, they started walking home along 2nd Street, a quiet, one-way road that was nearly empty at that hour. They kept glancing over their shoulders, staying alert. But even when you think you're aware of your surroundings, danger can come out of nowhere. Suddenly, they heard running footsteps behind them. Before Liana could turn around, a man grabbed her from behind, one arm clamped around her mouth, the other around her waist. She kicked and screamed as he tried to drag her off the sidewalk. Her friend screamed for help and struck the attacker repeatedly, causing enough commotion to draw people from a nearby corner. The man dropped Liana and bolted into the darkness before anyone could catch him. Police arrived within minutes. Witnesses confirmed the girl's story, and a full report was filed. Detectives visited Liana's home days later to collect details and review surveillance footage from both bars. Unfortunately, the suspect's face was never clearly identified. Shaken by the ordeal, Liana deleted her Instagram account and kept it deactivated. To this day, she warns others about how easy it is for someone to track you through social media by watching your tagged locations, school, and friends. Keeping your accounts private, she says, isn't just smart, it might save your life.